Today we're chatting about onboarding. So this comes up a lot in discussions with graphic designers and other service business owners. I think anyone who provides a service probably has some form of onboarding. So when I first heard this word, it was probably, 5 or 6 years ago. I was well into my business at that point, but I'd never heard the term onboarding. I was like, what is this? What does this mean? So I Googled it, of course. And once I read what it meant, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I've been doing this for years. I just didn't call it that. So for anyone who doesn't know, onboarding is basically the process by which you bring a client into your world, into your business. And the purpose or goal is to set up the project for success, right? In a very efficient way. So here's kind of what I've learned to be true and important about onboarding in my own business. So it needs to be clear, it needs to be informative, it needs to be helpful and concise. And then the biggest thing I think for me is that I need it to establish my professionalism and expertise, and it helps me take charge of the project, direct the flow of the project, which is super important. It doesn't need to be complicated, and in fact, it shouldn't be, right? Keeping it simple will ensure that your client can get through it and that they don't get bogged down in these very beginning steps with you. We don't want that, right? So this is important to get off on the right foot with any new client relationship. So why do we want to pay attention to our onboarding process? Why do we even want to have one? Looking back on my business and the projects I've done, the projects that have kind of gone wonky or had maybe a lack of boundaries or expectations or process, has really solidified for me the need to have an onboarding process. So it's going to set expectations and boundaries, gives your clients answers to questions that they may have in their head and they're afraid to ask, or maybe they're questions they haven't even thought of yet, like you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. So once they read through your document, they go, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like this answered a whole lot of kind of fuzziness for me. So that's a great reason to have an onboarding process. And even if you're working with a client who's worked with a designer before or many designers before, it's still important that you share your process, your way of working in your boundaries and expectations in your company, okay? Every designer's different, and it's perfectly okay for you to be clear on what you need in order to create a successful working relationship, right? And another reason this is important, it's going to save you time and energy so you can put it into your projects where it matters, right? Nobody wants to be stuck in admin land all the time. We don't want to be responding to tons of emails and questions. So this can really help streamline that process. And you can even, in some cases, automate this if you want to go down that far with it. So I relate this to like when you go to a doctor's office and they hand you the clipboard and you have all the paperwork to fill out. They're basically asking you to fill this out because in order to do the best job for you, they need some information from you, and they need to let you know the rules of working with them. So this is a very similar idea, right? We need to let our clients know what we need from them, and then we need some stuff back from them in order to have a great working relationship. So that's how I like to think about it. So in my business, we do, I guess what I'll call a pre-onboarding step. This is where I send them a document that includes a little bit about us, our bios, our hours, and how we like to communicate and how we prefer to receive feedback from the client as we're moving through a project. So those are questions to ask yourself as you're creating your own document that you want to share with them. Some other things that it includes are it gives them a list of the projects that we can help them with, like specifically, yes, we can do business cards. Yes, we can do flyers, brochures. Yes, we can help you with your logo and your branding. Okay, so just be clear about that, because sometimes, I can't think of a specific example, but I know many times over the years, we'll go through like a logo design with a client and they'll say, do you guys also do business cards? Can you help me with that? And, to us, it's just like, we can do whatever pretty much. But to a client, they don't know. So go ahead and spell it out, everything that you can do for them. Also, something to include in the document you might want to consider, and this is totally up to you. I do put it in ours. What's the base cost of doing business with you? Like, what's kind of the minimum level of entry that they can expect? Okay. And then you're also going to want to include your general project process and a general timeline they can expect, and let them know how many revisions are typically included in a project, right? What happens if they slide on their schedule? Do you institute a rebooking fee or something like that? How do you deliver your projects, and what are the typical deliverables that you include with that? And what are the typical deliverables you don't include, right? I found that so many of the problems that I was maybe experiencing around client boundaries are just poof, gone, like eliminated, just by having this document in place and sharing it with clients. So I send this pre-onboarding document. I call it our about us or our work with us document. I really need to come up with a better name for this. If anybody has any ideas, let me know. I'm not so good at coming up with names for things. Where was I? I found that so many of the problems I was experiencing around client boundaries are eliminated just by having this document in place and sharing it with clients. So I'll send this before I even sign on with a client, since I want them to be fully aware of how we work so they know what they're getting into before they agree to work with us. Some clients out there might need a designer who can drop everything and help them at a moment's notice. And that's perfectly fine if that's the type of designer you are and that's what they need and you're agreeing to that ahead of time. Back when I was a lot younger, I think I was more that type of designer. Now I'm not. I've got, a family and a lot of other things, and it doesn't fit into my lifestyle anymore the way I want to work. So I'm very clear about, our hours and how we're available and how they can communicate with us. And this has helped just make life so much easier and smoother. So how is this document different than like what's on your website? You might be asking that question. So much of this information might be on your website for anyone to see, but a lot of what is in our Work With Us document is actually not on our website. I just prefer to keep it a little bit more, I don't want to say secret, but it's not something just readily available to anyone on our website. So it's a PDF that we can share, or you could also set this up just as, a hidden page on your website and you share the link with a client when it's appropriate. That's completely fine. So I send that document, and then once they've signed the contract and paid a deposit and we're ready to work, you might have something called a welcome packet. And this is where they're going to go take the next step with you, right? We want to always be thinking in these steps, like take the next step. What's the next step? So in the welcome packet, this is where we're going to collect anything we need from them to actually do the project, right? There's going to be information we need. There might be questionnaires that you have that are helpful in gathering information for branding or a logo design, or websites pretty much always require quite a lengthy questionnaire. There might be checklists you need. And then something else that's really helpful is to give your client a list of key terms or jargon or acronyms they might need to know, like terms that you might use as you're working through the project, just so they can be aware of what you're talking about and you're speaking the same language, okay? So keep this as simple as possible. Once again, go back to, concise and helpful. Don't bog them down with a ton of steps where you can help it. I'd say aim for maybe 15 to 20 minutes of reading for them maximum. I mean, less if you can. And this, doesn't include the questionnaires or the process of getting their information back. This is just letting them know how you work and setting the expectations and boundaries, okay? A quick, straightforward project may not need all of these pieces necessarily all the time, but I do recommend for any new client, at the very least, you should always send them your how you work document, okay? So here are my onboarding steps in general, and I, change this up depending on the project and the client sometimes. But in general, here we go. We have a qualified lead, meaning they're interested, they're asking questions. Maybe we've had a few emails or a phone conversation. Then I send them the How We Work document via email. Then I want to get an idea of where we are on budget. I want to know that we're, kind of on the same page there. Because if we jump straight to the proposal stage, we're spending, a chunk of time creating a proposal. And it's really a bummer when you spend time on a proposal, you send it over and they see the number and they go, no, can't do it, So I try to get in alignment on the budget beforehand. I'll just do it via email and say, typically this type of project runs X number of dollars, or you can give them a range if you want, and just say, hey, does that work for you? And then see where it goes from there. If they say yes, then I move on to creating the proposal and a contract for them to sign. Then I always request at least a 50% deposit on the work. And once I receive that payment, that's when I'm going to send them any pre-work, any homework they need to do, intake forms. This is where we're going to collect all the information we need to actually do the project, okay? And when you send that pre-work, make sure that you are letting them know when you need it back in order to stay on schedule, okay? That needs to be factored into your schedule. Set a date and say, I'd really appreciate it if you get this back to me by X date in order to stay on schedule, so that you can have your final thing by whatever date they really, whatever date you've agreed to. Okay, then you're going to create a project schedule for them that shows all the steps. Here's where you send them the layout. Here's when you need feedback from them. Here's when you send them the next round. I find that actually being pretty detailed in a schedule is super helpful in getting them on board with that schedule. It's very clear as to when things are due, in order to get their final thing by when they want it, okay? And also remind them what happens if the schedule isn't followed. Is there a rebooking fee if it lags too long? Or is their deadline missed? Be clear about that. And you can do it in a really nice way. It doesn't have to be nasty or mean or threatening or anything like that, but it's just the facts. Like, if things don't stay on schedule, it's going to affect all of your other projects, and then that's no fun for anybody. So once all that's in place and your client has reviewed the schedule and said, yeah, that looks good, then you can get to work, okay? And I'm not going to go into, the work process today. I don't really consider that part of onboarding, but I think that should give you a pretty good overview of how the onboarding process can work. So once again, key principles to keep in mind: keep it clear, informative, helpful, concise if you can. And remember, this is establishing your boundaries and expectations for the project, and you're also putting forth your professionalism and your expertise by actually having this piece in place. It's really important. And it helps you take charge and direct how the project's going to go, which is always a good thing. So, and if we can do this, we are so much more likely to enjoy the project. At least in my experience, this is how it works. And I get to create even better work when I'm not, worried and constantly pulled and constantly wondering what the next step is. The steps are all laid out. It's all, the schedule's done. I get to enjoy the project, immerse myself in the creativity of it, and just have fun. And then that creates, obviously better work for our clients. So they're happy and they want to come back to us again, and they want to refer us to others. So I hope that was helpful for you today. Like I said, please drop me any questions below and I will get right back to you. All right. Have a wonderful day. Bye.